बिहारी जय जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतशी श्रीमद् ऐसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्री प्रभुपाद की। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतशी श्रीमद् भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर श्री प्रभुपाद की। आनंद कोटि वैष्णववृंद की। नामचय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्त वृंद की। श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरी गोवर्धन की। वृंदावन धाम की, मथुरा धाम की, गंगा माई की, यमुना माई की, तुलसी देवी की, भक्ति देवी की, समवेत भक्तवृंद की। All glories to the Assembled devotees. All glories to the Assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the Assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnupadaya. Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swami Tene. Okay, so yesterday we finished off the chapter, I believe. So now we're reading from chapter number 10, canto 2, text 1 to 3, because the first two texts don't have any purport.
Really? The first text doesn't have purport?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So we'll read the first one and then I'll... Shri Shukha Uvacha Atra Sargo Visargas Cha Sthanam Poshanam Utayah Manvantare Shanukatha Nirodho Muktir Ashrayah Shri Shugovacha Atra Sargo Visargascha Sthanam Poshanam Utyayah Manvantare Shanukatha Nirodha Muktir Ashrayah Shri Shukovacha Atra Sargo Visargascha Sthanam Poshanam Utyah Manvantare Shanukatha Nirodho Muktir Ashrayah Shri Shukovacha Atra Sargo Visargascha Sthanam Poshanam Uttayah Manvantare Shanukatha Nirodho Muktir Ashrayah Shri Shukovacha Atra Sargo Visargascha Sthanam Poshanam Uttayah Manvantare Shanukatha Nirodha Muktir Ashrayah Shri Shukovacha Tatra Sango Visargascha Sthanam Poshanam Uttayah Manvantare Shanukatha Nirodha Muktir Ashrayah Shri Shukovacha Shri Shukadev Goswami said, Atra in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Sargaha, statements of the creations of the universe, Visargaha, statements of subcreation. Cha, also. Sthanam, the planetary systems. Porshanam, protection. Uttayaha, the creative impetus. Manvantara, changes of Manus. Ishanu Kathaha, the science of God. Nirodha, going back home, back to Godhead. Muktihi, liberation. Ashrayaha, the summum bonum. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said in the Srimad Bhagavatam there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following creation. The creation of the universe, subcreation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of Manus, the science of God, returning home, back to Godhead, liberation, and the summum bonum. Okay, text 2. Dasamasya vishuddhe artham navanam iha lakshanam varnayanti mahatmanah shutrenatena chanjasa. Translation. To isolate the transcendence of the summum bonum, the symptoms of the rest are described sometimes by Vedic inference, sometimes by direct explanation, and sometimes by summary explanations given by the great sages. Bhutamatrindriya dhiyam janma sarga udahrita brahmano guna vaishamyad visarga paurusha smrtah. The elementary creation of 16 items of matter, namely the 5 elements, fire, water, land, air, and sky, sound, form, taste, smell, touch, and the ears, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and mind is known as sarga, whereas the subsequent resultant interaction of the modes of material nature is called visarga. Purport. In order to explain the 10 divisional symptoms of Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 7 continuous verses. The first of these under reference pertains to the 16 elementary manifestations of earth, water, etc., with material ego composed of material intelligence and mind. The subsequent creation is a result of the reactions of the above mentioned 16 energies of the first Purusha, the Mahavishnu incarnation of Govinda, as later explained by Brahma in the treatise Brahma Samhita as follows: Yakarnarnave jalabhajati sma yoga nidramananta jagananda saroma kupaha adhara shaktim avalambya param sumurtim govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. The first Purusha, incarnation of Govinda, Lord Krishna, known as Mahavishnu, goes into yoga nidra, mystic sleep. And the innumerable universes are situated in potency in each and every hair hole of his transcendental body. As mentioned in the previous verse, Shutena, or with reference to the Vedic conclusion, the creation is made possible for the Supreme Personality Godhead directly by manifestation of his particular energies. Without such a Vedic reference, the creation appears to be product of material nature. The conclusion comes from a poor fund of knowledge. From Vedic reference, it is concluded that the origin of all energies, namely internal, external, and marginal, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as explained here and before, the illusory conclusion is that creation is made by inert material nature. The Vedic conclusion is transcendental light, whereas the non-Vedic conclusion is material darkness. The internal potency of the Supreme Lord is identical with the Supreme Lord, and the external energy is enlivened in contact with the internal energy, internal potency. The parts and parcels of the internal potency which react in contact with the external potency are called the marginal potency or the living entities. Thus, the original creation is directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead or Parabrahman, and the secondary creation as a reactionary result of original ingredients is made by Brahma. Thus, the activities of the whole universe are started. Om Jnana Timirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshurinatam Ena Tasmai Shigrive Namah Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Stapinam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shiyatapatakamelam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savaditam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Varita Shri Vijakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabindu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastade Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavane Sure Bhushabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpaduruvescha Kripa Sindhu Vecha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namah Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swami Nityamane Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityamane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarinya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jnananandamayam Devam Nirvash Pratikakritam Adharam Sarva Vidyanam Hayagrivam Upasmahi Guru Vaishnav Bhagavan Tinera Smarana Hoy Vigna Vinashan Anayasi Hay Nijavanchita Purana. So here we're starting to discuss these 10 subject matters that are put into every Purana. So in order to be qualified as a Purana, it has to contain these 10 things. Sarga, Visarga, here is described, Sthanam, Poshanam, Uttaya, Manvantareshanu Nirodha Muktir Ashrayah. So all these things must be described. If they are not described, by the qualification or by the prerequisites, requirements of the Vedic standard, one cannot actually call the Srimad Bhagavatam a Purana if it didn't contain these things. So Shukadev Goswami is qualifying what he's speaking. Yes, he could just speak Krishna Katha, but the scholars of Vedic knowledge or Vedic philosophy would not accept it as a complete philosophy or complete Vedic literature, because in order to actually be a bona fide literature, it must contain these things. These are standards obviously also set by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So sometimes we often wonder, like, why in the fifth canto we start to describe, in the fourth canto, fifth canto, start to describe all of these different wild things, like the Jambudvipas are being described, like different heavenly planets, different subterranean planets are being described and how beautiful they are. Why would the Srimad Bhagavatam start to describe all of these things? Like I was reading this out when I was when we were taking prasadam, about how the mango trees are so huge and they produce fruits that are just like pulp and it's just juice. When it hits, it's just when it falls from the tree and it hits the ground, all the juices splurge out and they create rivers, huge rivers, wide, unbelievable. And you think, well, I want to go there and eat a mango. That mango sounds amazing. So why would the Srimad Bhagavatam describe such things when the conditioned soul is almost like pretty much attracted to such enjoyments? It describes the heavenly planets, it describes the different enjoyments one can have in the, just below the earth. What are those called? What's the subterranean hellish planets, where there's more enjoyment than the heavenly planets. So why would the Srimad Bhagavatam describe all of these things? Well, because it needs to be stated in order to, like I'm saying, that so that it is qualified as a Purana, that people take it seriously, that it is not just taken as a sentimental thing. Religion without philosophy is just sentimentalism. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is complete in itself, because when the literature describes all of these different things, its qualification as a Purana becomes complete. So then Vedic scholars and those who are on the path of the this Bhagavat Marg, they all take it seriously. This Srimad Bhagavatam is taken seriously. Of course, it's spoken by Brahma and Vyasadeva and Narada, but they've established it in such a way so that it is not shunned upon, it is not not looked at as some lower scripture, because it is just describing only the pastimes of the Lord. Of course, those who are devotees of the Lord, that's all they care about, and therefore they extract that nectar. They see everything that is being described in relation to, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in relation to Krishna. They do not see it as separately as somebody who, as devotees, I've heard devotees describe how these are like small ornaments, like the Srimad Bhagavatam is the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and these are very small ornaments, little very small things that are decorating the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, it's described that when Krishna wears something, it's not that the ornament makes him look more beautiful, it's that Krishna makes the ornament look more beautiful. Is that right? Yeah. That's the way that, I just didn't want to get that wrong. So that is the beauty of Krishna. Krishna is so beautiful, the ornament does not beautify Krishna, Krishna beautifies the ornament. So because of these relations, these different subject matters are being described in relation to Krishna, and Shukadev Goswami is primarily focusing on that, of course, but because they have been described like this, it becomes very beautiful actually to hear also. So when one is realized, as Srila Prabhupada said, when Prabhupada said one should read every word of the Srimad Bhagavatam, not to skip over anything. Why? Because in every word, Krishna is being infused. Krishna is there. Krishna is present in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's the body of the Lord. So we do not neglect such subject matters, and Shukadev Goswami has not neglected such subject matters. He's done it in such a way that it is creating more attraction to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just like when we see the Lord, we can see the different ornaments that are in Him, and we can understand, we can see the beauty of the Lord. How the Lord is beautifying such ornaments. So similarly here, we can, by these descriptions, they're glorifying the Lord actually. Even the Manvantara, it's quite amazing how these things are coming about. It's quite, for one who understands the energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who understands creation, sub-creation, although seemingly it seems external, the devotee, he's very keen in understanding such things because this is called Sambandha Tattva Gyan. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, and as we studied through the Chatushloki and Mahotsa Prabhu was explaining this also, that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said only 3 things are described in scripture. What were those 3 things? Yeah, Sambandha, Abhideya and Prayojan. What's Sambandha?
Understanding one's relationship with Krishna.
How do we do that?
The scripture.
The scripture. Philosophy. One has to understand philosophy in order to do this. Because without the philosophy, there's no process. We don't understand what the process is. Or without the philosophy, we don't know what the goal is. And in order to get a goal, we need a process. And so the process yields the goal. So we have to know what the goal is and how to get it. So we need a process. We're not just some random process, but a process that is established in proper knowledge, established in absolute truth. So Sambandha Tattva Gyan is very important because that it is knowledge. It is provided knowledge by Shastra, philosophy, by which we can start to understand our position in relation to this material world, in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We can start to understand all of these different things. Sorry, I'm just looking at what I've written here. So we have to understand the different energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that is being given. We have to understand the creation, sub-creation. May not be complete understanding, but it is by knowledge which we understand the position of the jiva also. It gives us some understanding of our particular nature. So here, the Sambandha Tattva Gyan, the philosophy or the knowledge of how this whole material creation is coming about is starting to be described. And so here, the elementary creation of 16 items of matter, namely the 5 elements, fire, water, land, air, sound, form and taste, smell, touch and eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin and mind, is known as sarga, whereas subsequent resultant interaction of the modes of material nature is called visarga. So before all of this, the word sarga itself, recreation, and this sarga is the creation. So these are known as creation. The elementary creation of 16 items of matter is known as creation, whereas subsequent resultants, interaction of modes and material nature is called subcreation or recreation. So here a very important point Shukadeva Goswami points out here is to isolate transcendence of the sum and bonum, the symptoms of the rest are described sometimes by Vedic inference, sometimes by direct explanation, and sometimes by summary explanations given by the great sages. So the important principle we'll see here, it sometimes seems like a very simple principle. Life comes from life. This is being described actually in this purport that Srila Prabhupada is writing. Life comes from life. How is this being described? Because here, Srila Prabhupada starts to speak about the energies of the Lord. And as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very much strongly argued with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, all right, with, here, let me quickly, I've got the references here. That's Dancing in the Rath Yatra. So this is here. Yeah, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, when they were discussing upon these subject matters of the energies of the Lord, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very much, when he was speaking with him, he was describing to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that you do not understand that he's saying to him that you think that that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no potencies, has no energies. And so then he starts to quote from the Vishnu Purana, it's mentioned the 6th canto 761 in the Vishnu Purana. Let me bring this up because I just had it up and then I lost it. Okay. Yeah, so this is the liberation of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says the Supreme Personality of Godhead has 3 primary potencies. Are you trying to prove that he has no potencies? And so then he quotes from the Vishnu Purana, beginning with the internal potency of the Supreme Lord Vishnu is spiritual, as verified by the Shastras. There is another spiritual potency known as Kshetrajna, or this living entity. The third potency, which is known as Nishans, makes the living entity godless and fuels him with fruitive activity. So as Srila Prabhupada is mentioning here, namely internal, external, and marginal potencies. So he begins this little, we see the quote from Brahma Samhita, Yakar Nanave Jale Bhajat Isma Yoga. So how the whole material creation is being manifested from Mahavishnu. And then Prabhupada goes on to say that, as mentioned in the previous verse, Shrutena, or with reference to Vedic conclusion, the creation is made possible from the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly by manifestation of his particular energies. Without such a Vedic reference, the creation appears to be a product of material nature. This conclusion comes from a poor fund of knowledge. From the Vedic reference, it is concluded that the origin of all energies, namely internal, external, and marginal, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as explained here and before, the illusory conclusion is the creation made by the inert material nature. So the Vedic conclusion is transcendental light, whereas the non-Vedic conclusion is material darkness. So there's a very important point to understand that life comes from life. It is actually a very deep conclusion or statements of the Vedic literature. It is actually, Prabhupada makes it so simple. There was one who is stating this, that when very, very learned Vedic scholars look at Srila Prabhupada's work and they see how he's explained things, they realize the greatness of Srila Prabhupada. They realize, oh, this person, he understands so many things so deeply, he's able to put it into simple words to describe everything in 2 words, 3 words. Life comes from life, 4 words. This is like the ultimate conclusion of the Vedic literature, that everything comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is life. And without him being a person or a life, there's no question of having any other life. This is actually a very profound statement of the Vedic literatures that even nobody can capture. But Srila Prabhupada, he's captured it in 4 words, in English words. The Mayavadis, they speculate upon so many different things in the Vedic literatures and come up with different jugglery words to describe, and none of it makes any sense. When they describe it to others, it doesn't make any sense. But Srila Prabhupada's greatness is that he is able to capture the essence of all Vedic literatures in 4 words. Life comes from life, and he's able to impart that knowledge onto Malechas and Yavanas like us who can't even understand basic philosophy. And so this is such an amazing thing here, because he begins to describe how everything is coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything is manifest from the Supreme Person. And the Supreme Person has these 3 energies, namely internal, external, and marginal. Because without these energies, there is no energetic, as Srila Prabhupada also made it very clear. So it is poor fund of knowledge of those who cannot come to such conclusions. They are either, as Prabhupada says here, that without such Vedic reference, the creation appears to be a product of material nature. Or that here, and as it explained herein before, the illusory conclusion is that creation is made by the inert material nature. The Vedic conclusion is transcendental light, whereas non-Vedic conclusion is material darkness. So the atheists, their position is like that they're influenced by material energy, just like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is quoting from Vishnu Purana here, that the third potency, which is known as nescience, makes the living entity godless and fills them with fruitive activities. So the nature of the external energy is to make the living entity godless, that it is material. So this antaranga potency, the chit shakti, the original swarup shakti, and then the titashta shakti, and then the bahiranga shakti. These are the 3 shaktis. These are 3 energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The antaranga shakti is the spiritual energy, as it is being described in this. The internal potency of the Supreme Lord is spiritual, is non-different from Him. Of course, Krishna is not different from any of His energies. But the internal potency of Supreme Personality of Godhead is completely spiritual. So that spiritual energy, from that spiritual energy, as is being described in another place, when it is, the external potency is enlivened when in contact with the internal potency. So this is the point being made here, that the internal potency, the life, spiritual, which is life, which is equated to spirit, that which is spirit is life. You see, you can't separate the two. The soul is spirit, and life that is the symptom of the soul. That it is life. So people try to separate that. Well, how do you? Well, the trees are life, the animals are life, and all of this is life. What is around us growing, that is born, that it grows, that undergoes some transformation, produces byproduct, dwindles and dies. These are the symptoms of life. So the Christians will say that there's no soul within that body. It's a nonsense conclusion. But that wherever there is life means there is spirit. There is spiritual contact. That Prabhupada says here, the external potency is enlivened in contact with the internal potency. Simple understanding. Simple. This body does not move without the spirit within this body. The body does not move without the soul. Unless there is contact of the spirit soul with matter, there's no question of movement. There's no question of any sort of change, any sort of movement happening in this material world. So the Supreme Personality God's internal potency is identical with the Supreme Lord, and the external potency is enlivened in contact with the internal potency. So life comes from life. The internal potency is non-different from Krishna, and when it is in contact with when the external potency is enlivened in contact with the internal potency. So as we see here the Mahavishnu glances upon the Mahatattva, and then he impregnates, and then all the living entities come about. So the part and parcels of the internal potency which react in contact with the external potency are called the marginal potency, or the living entities. So here that is described, let me see here. Well, the common one, obviously we have is Jivara Swarupa He Krishna Nitya Das, Krishna Tatashta Shakti Veda Veda Prakash. That is, it is the living entity's constitutional position to be an eternal servant of Krishna, because he is the marginal energy of Krishna, and as manifestation simultaneously one with and different from the Lord, like a molecular particle of sunshine or fire. Krishna has three variegated varieties of energies. So this is another very important point that is being addressed here, that the living entity is marginal potency. He is the Tatashta Shakti. He is the parts, the fragmental part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, part and parcel of the internal potency, and react in contact with the external energies are called the marginal potencies, and that is described in the Madhya Leela, which, if I can bring it up again, his Tatashta nature is that, O king, the Kshetra Jnat Shakti is the living entity. Although he has the facility to live in either the material or the spiritual world, he suffers the threefold miseries of the material existence because he is influenced by avidya, nescience, potency, which covers his constitutional position. So when one is covered by the external potency, he forgets the Tatashta Shakti. The marginal potency is prone to forget his original nature, his spiritual nature. He is actually one in quality with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His nature is not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is, of course, different in the quantity. Krishna is unlimited. The living entity is minute. But he is spiritual energy. But he is able to be influenced by the material energy, or be covered by the material energy, because of his minute nature. So he has the facility to live either in the material or the spiritual world, but he suffers threefold material miseries because he is influenced by avidya. So when one is influenced by avidya, then one thinks that everything is a creation of matter, although logically it has no basis. If you challenge a scientist, Prabhupada said like that, don't challenge the scientists in any other regard, only challenge them in this particular thing. Life comes from life. Don't talk to them about everything else. That you do not know, because how much can we study? Can't study quantum mechanics. How can we argue with scientists on quantum mechanics? How can we argue with scientists on the mass of a proton? We can't. It's just they know more, you could say. They've studied that. They may have studied that more. But a basic principle that they may state anything, but without the base statement of life, everything else that they do or state falls apart. So Prabhupada was very intelligent, is not attacking details, but attacking a very fundamental base principle that would make everything fall apart for them. Life comes from life, very simple. Like I'm saying that he is summarized the essence of Vedic literatures in 4 statements that defeats the atheist, defeats the scientist, defeats everyone in their tracks. Very simple. So the scientists, their statement is like this, is that life comes from matter. Why? Because they are influenced by this avidya, by ignorance. That is against Vedic conclusion. This conclusion, so here it says, without such Vedic reference, the creation appears to be a product of material nature. This conclusion comes from a poor fund of knowledge. From Vedic reference, it is concluded that the origin of all energies, namely internal, external, and marginal, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As explained here and before, the illusory conclusion is that creation is made by the inert material nature. So that is the conclusion of the scientists, that everything comes from a, what is that word that they use? From the one point. What is the word they use often to define that? Huh? Big Bang, but they say everything comes from a singularity, singular point. Everything began from one little point. There was a small, infinitely small point. Because how could that? How is the point? How big is the point that it started? Big. If it is a big point, then isn't it a space within that point? Anyways, it gets confusing. But so it would have had to be an infinitely small point from which everything came about, which is ignorance. It's avidya. It's foolishness. It's illusion, madness. The illusion is madness. Is to be mad. This is crazy. How can you say that everything just came from a little infinitely small point? It doesn't make any sense at all. It's just like you have to have they hammered the religions for being, having to have so much faith and blind faith. But your dumb philosophy requires insanity to believe in it. It really requires insanity. We all came from a small point. Actually, we all somehow became persons who are very complicated in their thinking from a small point. That was just inert matter. How did that point come about? We don't know. It's just there was a point and everything just, what reaction and action took place? Where was time? Where was space? Where was all of these things? Well, it all came from there. Okay. Then you show us. You show us how it happened. Show us on some minute level. There's no explanation. There's no what is the explanation? Well, as we read, Mahavishnu expands all the universes. As he breathes out, all the universes expand. So similarly, they've been able to observe with their scientific instruments the expansion of this universe, how it's expanding. So just like the Mayavadis conclude from negation, not this, not that sort of logic, that because it's expanding, it must have started somewhere. And if it's constantly expanding, it must have started at a point in one place. So that is the conclusion. So that's the conclusion. Well, it can't. Well, what else can we think of? You can't. Why? Because you do not have Vedic reference. Because without Vedic reference, what is Vedic reference? Well, Vedic reference is coming directly from the Supreme Personality of God. It is, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas are coming from me. I am giving this knowledge. So one has, unless one understands knowledge, which is coming from superiority, coming from the Supreme Personality of God, is coming from the Apaurushaya, then it is impossible to understand this creation. And if one can't even understand the simple form of creation, and he thinks that it is by matter everything is coming about, there's no question of self-realization. One has to understand these points. One has to understand Sambandha Tattva Gyan. One has to understand his position, who the Supreme Personality of God it is, who am I, what is this material world, what is these modes of material nature. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita describes all of these things. It describes all of these things so one can understand his proper position, because that's what Krishna is doing on the battlefield of Kurukshetra to Arjuna. He's giving him gyan. He's giving him knowledge. Because as a part of pastime, he's forgetting. Arjuna forgets his position in relation to Krishna. But Krishna starts to describe all of these things and asks Arjuna at the end, have you understood it? Have you understood how to act now? And then now go act. Now he's encouraging him. Now, Sambandha Abhideya. He's also given Abhideya Tattva again, how you should act. Offer your food, offer your whatever you do, whatever austerities you perform, whatever you eat, whatever you offer it to me. So he's given that. But you'll see Krishna is really revealing that he's constantly hammering on philosophy within the Bhagavad Gita to make Arjuna understand his position. And from that understanding then comes the ability to engage in that activity of being able to serve Krishna and serve Krishna through the process of devotional service. And then the fruit is developed of that love of Godhead, this prema. So Arjuna is being given all of these things, but the scientists, they reject it on the basis that, well, it's just blind faith. Well, your philosophy requires so much more blind faith. And it practically doesn't make any sense. It requires one to be a little bit insane. And therefore the Vishayis, the sense gratifiers are defined as insane, because it doesn't make any sense. And without the basis that everything comes from matter, actually the sense enjoyers cannot get proper sense enjoyment. Because if you understand actually everything comes from a person, then unless you're really ignorant and you're just like, whatever, if you understand that point, then you naturally inquire who that person is, how to love that, how to actually understand, who that person is, how to approach that person, how to serve under that person properly. Just like if there is a great king in the kingdom, one wants to serve him nicely. If he understands that king is a great king, that he is a very righteous king, then naturally the citizens want to follow his rules that he has set forward. So similarly, if the jiva was meant to accept this principle of that the Purusha is there, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is there, who is creating all of these things, then his ignorance would be dispelled, and his nature of his conditioned nature of trying to enjoy in this material world would be stopped to a great extent, would be checked. But if one cannot accept that or is blind to that, he accepts matter as the end all and be all creation, then he doesn't have to worry about such things. Ultimately there is no cause. Ultimately everything just goes into oblivion anyways. So then I can do whatever I like. I can enjoy as much as I like. I can go and have sex with anything that I like. Actually at the end of it, whatever morality, what is morality anyways? Actually there's no morality on the atheistic platform. Without this understanding of actually life comes from life, of that actually everything comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no morality. What is moral basis? You can just do whatever the hell you like. Everything comes from matter anyways. So those who come to this conclusion of that everything comes from matter are actually insane. They have no basis of proper discrimination, proper understanding, proper intelligence. Everything is lost for one who cannot accept this fact that everything comes from God. And therefore, the jiva, stuck in his ignorance, he becomes atheistic. He becomes, he becomes envious towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because the Mayavadis, more or less, their conclusion is the same. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is it's a material conception, that he's inert, he's just energy. That's a material conception, that he's just energy. There's no understanding of energetic. So therefore they're fools and rascals also. They're just sense enjoyers, no better than them. Actually worse, if not better. They're not better than them. So the Mayavadis do the same thing. They say, well, Supreme Personality Godhead doesn't have energies. He himself is just inert. He doesn't exist. He's illusion. You're illusion. He's illusion. We're all illusion. So this nonsense philosophy just brings about more avidya, you could say. Higher degrees of avidya are there in this material world. As is being described here also, the living entity covered by influence of nations exists in different forms in the material condition. O king, thus he is proportionately freed from the influence of material nature to greater or less degrees. Prabhupada writes, the material energy acts on the living entity in different degrees according to how he acquires the association of three modes of material nature. The 8.4 million species of life, some inferior and some superior and some mediocre. The graduation of the bodies are calculated according to the covering of material energy. The lower categories include aquatics, trees, plants, insects, birds, and so forth. Spiritual consciousness is almost non-existent. In the mediocre category, the human form of life, spiritual consciousness is comparatively awakened. In the superior life forms, spiritual consciousness is fully awakened. Then the living entity understands its real position and tries to escape the influence of material energy by developing Krishna consciousness. So this avidya, the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, covers the living entity to different degrees. So those who start to accept the Vedic reference, those who start to come to the level of developing faith in the Vedic scriptures, they get freedom. But those who do not develop faith, ashaddha purusha, and then this dharmasyasya parantapa aprapya mam nivartante, and mrityu sansara vartmani, that they continue in the cycle of birth and death. Those who do not have faith in the scriptures, they will continue in the cycle of birth and death. So we see here that, but for those who do accept, but those who do have faith, they will come up. Krishna will give them the knowledge by which they can come to Him. That I shall give you the shining lamp of knowledge by which you can dispel this darkness, Krishna says. So the Vedic literatures are direct manifestations, or the direct understanding of how one can achieve liberation. Liberation means how one can achieve his true Krishna consciousness within this lifetime, or over many lifetimes maybe also. So Krishna consciousness is giving us a position by which we can actually approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So because we have understood or taken to the Vedic way or Vedic understanding of life. So one who comes up to the platform of human life, which is the mediocre of spiritual consciousness, is comparatively awakened. So he has the position to be able to awaken such things, to be able to start to come to the understanding that is starting to become described here. All of this, sometimes you read things in the Bhagavatam and it's like quite wild. It's like, wow, how the heck do I understand that? And he's just like, well, you might not be able to. And Prabhupada says like that actually in some of these descriptions. He says, yeah, some of these things are completely, inconceivable. We have to understand that. We have to understand one of the aspects of understanding Vedic knowledge is that some things, part of that knowledge is some things are inconceivable. To have that knowledge, that a lot of things are inconceivable to me. There's only so much that I can understand. Whereas the scientists, they want to measure everything, Maya, measure everything. Therefore, they're always in Maya. Therefore, they're always in illusion, because without my measurement, then there's no real. I cannot conclude anything without measurement, more or less. That's the philosophy of the scientists. If we cannot measure it, then we cannot prove it, or we cannot prove its existence. But the scholars or the students of Vedic literatures and Vedic knowledge, this is the base understanding that many things are inconceivable. Actually, most things are inconceivable. But the main point is to understand these basic things deeply, to understand that the creation is coming from a person, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that the living entity is spiritual by nature, is a part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but is influenced by material energy. And then there's the material energy which is illusory. Those understanding these basic things, and then inquiring about how to act in this world so that one gets free of his illusory position, of his misidentification with his body, which is causing him so much pain and suffering within this material world. So Shukadeva Goswami is starting to describe Sarga and Visarga, the creation and subcreation, It gets probably pretty technical as this goes on. And so, yeah, it's going to get pretty technical as it goes on. I'm not such a technical guy, so I can't particularly speak on all of the, sometimes here, the different transformations and transformation of false ego, from ego, false ego to such and such and such. Sometimes I described. I can't, it's just like, even when I read it now, it's just like, whoa, all of these things are a little bit more difficult to understand than, some of the more the basic things. Basic things means like, even the basic things Prabhupada's given is given in a simple way so that we've been able to understand it. But some of these things that have been described, definitely I can't completely like capture or give complete knowledge of. But at least what's being described here, the principle is life comes from life. The origin of all energies is Krishna. That is, he's the origin of everything. So this begins here like this. Prabhupada is starting to describe. So he ends this purport by saying, thus the original creation is directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Param Brahman, and the secondary creation as a reactionary result of original ingredients is made by Brahma. Thus the activities of the whole universe are started. So we have complete knowledge in the Srimad Bhagavatam of how the creation has come about, how sub-creation has come about. So Prabhupada would say, I am the greatest scientist. Prabhupada would tell like that to the scientists, I am the greatest. Do you know why? He would like mess with the scientists a little bit. He said, because I have taken knowledge from the greatest scientist. And who's that greatest scientist? Krishna. Why? Because he's creating everything. You, in your labs, Prabhupada is, he would say like, they cannot even, create small things. Why are they talking about such big things? So you in your lab can't even create, I don't have a reference to Prabhupada saying this, but he's implying like this. You in your lab can't even create, small fly. But Krishna is creating this whole entire universe. You have to do so much study to create this little tiny phone. And you have to do so much study to create some little mechanical thing. But Krishna, he's creating everything. So that means he has supreme knowledge. So he knows how to create everything. Therefore, I'm taking knowledge from him. Therefore, I'm also the greatest scientist. Because I have taken knowledge from the greatest scientist. So, therefore, Prabhupada's book, Science of Self-Realization, it is science of knowledge. It is a science of understanding. It is not just some, sentimental philosophy like we see that is so present in within so many other sects. Therefore, we're not a sect. We're basing everything off the eternal nature of the soul. It is a science by which we're basing things. We're not just saying we're right because we're right, like the Christians. Why are you right? Because we're right. Can you explain some basic things? No. Just accept that I am right. But no, Srimad Bhagavatam gives us a complete understanding of everything. Look, yes, you're the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but then that's the essence of everything, but then it gives us so much more to develop more faith in Krishna, in that understanding that we're servants of Krishna. So that is the nature of Vedic literature, is that it gives complete knowledge. It's a whole lifestyle, we often say. Krishna consciousness is a whole lifestyle. It's not just, you don't come to church and then, the rest of your time you just live like a ordinary materialist, just a sense enjoyer. You come to church, you come to the mosque, you come to the temple, and then that's it. That's as far as God is. God is within the, within the four walls of the temple. But actually the devotee, he centers his whole life around Krishna because he is in complete knowledge how God is present, who God is, who himself is, how this life is meant to be lived only for Krishna. No other business is there. So it helps us understand these things. Otherwise, we'll also be like as you see, devotees who do not study the Srimad Bhagavatam, they live like that. Devotees who do not study Prabhupada's books, they live like Christians. Come to the temple, okay, Jai Hari Bol, put a little donation, And then the rest of your life is just a karmi life. Why? Because there's no study being done. There's no reference, as Prabhupada is saying. One is not taking reference from Vedic literatures. The devotees within the Krishna consciousness movement are not taking proper reference. So what are they taking reference from? They take reference from the materialist. What do they say? Well, you enjoy your senses. You can do all of these things. And so the devotees take this, like, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I'll take a little. I like what the materialists say in terms of enjoyment in life. And more or less, if you probably examine, the devotees have more faith in the scientists than the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that causes a big problem, because the whole nature, that's why you'll see a devotee who has deep faith in the Srimad Bhagavatam, his life will be molded around the Srimad Bhagavatam, around distributing it, speaking it, and following it. But those who do not hear the Srimad Bhagavatam and those who do not study the Srimad Bhagavatam, their life is centered around the Vani, you could say, the instructions coming from the materialist. To enjoy your senses, and then on the side, it's nice to go and worship God because it gives you a good feeling. It helps you maintain a higher standard of life. This is a new thing in psychology now, especially pushed forward by Jordan Peterson. Not that to love God, but because if you're having some psychological issues and difficulties in your life, you go pray. You go pray to God. Does he exist? Well, don't care about that. Who cares about that? That's not, he'll say like that. That's not the point. The point is that you yourself will become better by doing this. Who cares about God? It's just the fact that you feel in your heart that there's a higher being will bring you up. That's his philosophy. And so it's like that, you can go enjoy your senses and then come to the temple and it makes you feel a little bit better because whatever the spiritual atmosphere is there. So one must take proper Vedic reference. Without it, then our lives will be centered around the reference of the materialists, those who think that everything comes from matter. So therefore Srimad Bhagavatam is emphasizing so many times, is describing all of these things so that we may take shelter in that and not in the knowledge of the materialist. We take shelter in the science that is presented by the Srimad Bhagavatam, not the science presented by the materialist. So and by doing that, one develops deep faith in Krishna, Shraddha. He develops faith, and the qualification of bhakti is that he develops Shraddha. Shraddhavan jana hai bhakti adhikar. That he gets bhakti by doing this. He starts to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face by accepting the statements of the Srimad Bhagavatam as total. It is the complete conclusion, beginning, middle, and end, Srimad Bhagavatam. So one has to make Srimad Bhagavatam his life. One has to make that his reference. Everything that he does has to be in reference to the Srimad Bhagavatam, not in reference with anything else. Not the idea of the materialists. We have to take all our solutions. This is the chapter. Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. So we have so many questions about our own lives and our own, maybe sometimes our material bodies, sometimes what to do, what not to do. So we can approach the Srimad Bhagavatam, not the materialist. And when we take the statements of the Srimad Bhagavatam because they're absolute, our lives will also be lived in an absolute Krishna conscious way. When we take it and we apply the principles, the absolute knowledge becomes, our life also becomes absolute. It becomes Krishna conscious. Whatever we're doing, because it will be referenced into the Srimad Bhagavatam, it will be Krishna conscious. The activities that we perform will be Krishna conscious. So by taking proper Vedic reference, by understanding these things properly, we'll be able to come to the standard of complete knowledge. So I'll end my class there. Questions and comments. There's Mahotsa Prabhu's on the line. Corrections. Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
He's calling you.
He's not calling you? I think it looked like you were about to pick your phone up.
Hare Krishna.
He's calling.
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear?
Yeah.
Hare
Yeah, I can hear you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, Chandan. So, the point, again, basically the crux of all the philosophy of the scientists is Mayavad, or Shunyavad. They say that something is coming from an infinitesimally small point. Is like saying everything is coming from zero.
Yeah.
Everything is zero. or everything is coming from an infinitesimally small point, it just means like it's basically voidness or impersonalism completely. You know, and like you're saying, you have to be insane to believe such a philosophy. Whereas, the process of Krishna consciousness is very scientifically explained in the Bhagavatam. How does creation happen? Where does everything come from? There's like the whole process. Like, okay, for example, if you have to create an iPhone, where did an iPhone come from? It came from a small point, infinitesimally small point. No one would, but if you said actually there was a guy and he this is how you make the screen and this is how you make like the whatever transistors. I don't even know what the hell goes on inside the phone, but this is how you make this, is how you make that, and therefore you have an iPhone. And you have to have a satellite somewhere up in the sky to like make sure all this works or something like that. So similarly, if you see the Srimad Bhagavatam, everything is described. Okay, first, all the universe has come out of the pores of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then he expands himself and enters into each of the universe. And then, from that, Lord Brahma comes, and again the Supreme Lord enters into every atom. How are all the species created? They're the Prajapatis, they're the blueprints of every 8.4 million species of life. All that is already there. All that is already given. All that is already given in the scriptures. How it's very intelligently defined and described.
Yeah.
And how do you see it? Well, you have to follow the process of Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
No, I want to see it right now. Okay, if I want to become a quantum physicist right now and understand everything, it doesn't work like that. You have to
see an
go
atom.
through.
I want to see an atom.
Yeah, I want to see an atom.
Who's seen
I
an
want to do
atom?
everything right now. Exactly. Have you seen an atom? Have you seen a subatomic particle? Have you seen a...
Yeah. Oh, your AirPod's connected. Sorry. Okay, can you say that last bit again, like 10 seconds? Because his AirPod's connected to it. And yeah, wait. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it was my AirPods.
No, his...
So
no,
anyway.
Yeah, anyways,
Oh, his AirPods. Okay.
Yeah. You said subatomic particles and then...
Yeah. How do you know about subatomic particles? How do you know about this? How do you know about... Because someone else had told you.
Yeah.
But here you can see that the process of Krishna consciousness, first and foremost, requires you to control your senses and chant Hare Krishna. We have to first, at least chant Hare Krishna, at least take prasadam. And if you want to experience Krishna, and the thing about the scientist is that you may finally realize everything maybe at the end of it all. But the thing with Krishna consciousness is you can realize Krishna at every step. Yeah. Therefore, it's a much more scientific process. And devotees should take their time in studying all this and doing all that, because nakaro alas, Siddhanta Balya Chitte, nakaro alas, you should not be lazy in understanding these points. Whoever is giving class should, do some excruciating research into whatever is being spoken about here. Sarga, Visarga, all these things are important for us to know. Nakaro alas, we should not be lazy in understanding these points. So what if we're not expert? We should become expert. At least we should try our best to understand, see what the acharyas are saying, make some, and do nakaro alas. Don't be lazy, and because by doing so, then your faith in Krishna will become strong. Usually like anything, I don't know. Yes, of course we don't know because we're bound by avidya. But we should at least, give our endeavor. Prabhupada so painstakingly, wrote these books for us to look into them, understand all these points. So, that's a point I wanted to make.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anything else? Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. So just a couple things. So I'll read a couple things. So one thing is, so this verse is mentioned a couple of times throughout Prabhupada's books. It's mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So I'll read the translations for that. It's in the Adi Leela. I won't go through it, but there's a whole purport to it, and I think that's what I was thinking of earlier when I was saying there's no purport to this verse. And so Prabhupada explains in that purport, like, Sarga, Visarga, all the different things. It's actually a nice purport if anybody wants to read that. But so the translation is, and then I'll read another translation also of the same verse. So here in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10 subjects are described. Prabhupada says them like a little bit differently, but the creation of the ingredients of the cosmos, 2, the creations of Brahma, 3, maintenance of the creation, 4, special favor given to the faithful, 5. Impetuses for activity. 6. Prescribed duties for law-abiding men. 7. A description of the incarnations of the Lord. 8. The winding up of the creation. 9. Liberation from the gross and subtle material existence. And 10. Ultimate shelter. The ultimate shelter, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is an interesting part here, the last part. The 10th item is the shelter for all the others. To distinguish this ultimate shelter from the 9 other subjects, the Mahajanas have described these 9 directly or indirectly through prayers or direct explanations. And then this is also mentioned in the 12th canto. I won't read the translation for that because it's kind of the same. But anyways, pretty much it makes the point that a Purana talks about those 10, and then lesser Puranas mention those 5. But the last sentence, or the last paragraph in the purport is Jiva Goswami. There's a lot of good points mentioned in this also. But it says that Srila Jiva Goswami has explained that the 10 principal topics of Srimad Bhagavatam are found within each of the 12 cantos. One should not try to assign each of the 10 topics to a particular canto, nor should the Srimad Bhagavatam be artificially interpreted to show that it deals with the topics successively. The simple fact is that all aspects of knowledge important to human beings summarized in the 10 categories mentioned above are described with various degrees of emphasis and analysis through the Srimad Bhagavatam. So anyways, it just kind of
Yeah, it's an
expanding on
important
those
point that I
verses.
forgot to mention actually.
Yeah.
That it's not like progressively describing like that. It's
Yeah.
all intertwined.
Yeah, and then I had a question. I don't know. I guess like a technical thing, but do you know exactly like what like triggered? Because I forget. Maharaj Parikshit, or maybe Sukadeva Goswami starting to explain like the heavenly planets and just like the whole universal structure. Like why? Because I know there's Jada Bharat and then the forced material enjoyment, and then that's like.
And then after that, 5th canto.
I don't know if he said something in the beginning of the 5th canto or like. Because all these verses have like links.
He said, well, I want to know more about the line.
The line.
The line of this, like, this spirit
Vishishumara?
of Jad Bharata.
Oh, okay.
So then it goes back, I believe, and then he starts to discuss, there's Bharata, and then he starts to describe the different lines that are there, and then it comes to somehow Jambudvipa, and it kind of, I remember that it went in that direction, but I forget how exactly, why the heavenly planets and all of these are being described. I forget exactly.
Yeah.
Still finishing, now I'm almost up to just finishing that section a little bit. But yeah, I forget exactly why he described the heavenly planets.
Okay. Anyways, I would just have to
Or
look.
just these different
I
subterranean.
don't know if you know off the top of your head. Okay, but anyways, one thing too, with that verse I read from Chaitanya Charitamrita, I mean, we see that with the prayers also.
Oh
that,
yeah, okay, here, I remember now.
Oh, you
Just
got
looking at the topics. I think so. He asks, Parikshit Maharaj asked about Priyavrata, and then Priyavrata ruled a particular kingdom, and then he had sons. I believe Priyavrata had sons who were ruling other kingdoms.
Yeah.
So then he starts to describe like, well, he was ruling this kingdom, and in this kingdom, this is what they would do. He was ruling this place, and this is what this place was like, and this is what would go on. And so like he starts to go in that direction like that. And then I think Parikshit Maharaj must ask more about like, well, you're describing all of these things. What about more? Like what else is going on? I believe that it went down in that. But I can give you, maybe afterwards we can look at it and get more of a concrete thing.
I'll look at it too later, but I was kind of just wondering.
Anything else? Oh yeah, Ravi.
Prabhu, I like the point you were making about if devotees don't take the Shastras seriously, then they'll be influenced by other, forms of knowledge, whether it's, mostly it's the scientists, and there's that statement, I think it's in the 11th canto, Vaishnavam Priyam, Bhagavatam Vaishnavam Priyam, that the Srimad Bhagavatam is very dear to the Vaishnavas. And I was talking with a devotee recently, and they were explaining how they were compiling different statements about Prabhupada bashing atheism, and the whole Krishna consciousness movement is based on defeating godlessness. And this devotee told me this quote from Srila Prabhupada, and we hear devotees say so many different things, that, Prabhupada said this. But he said, Prabhupada said, the more you kick on the face of Charles Darwin, the more you make spiritual advancement.
Wow.
I said, wow. And sure enough, I looked this up, and Prabhupada says this on a morning walk, verbatim.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Prabhupada was definitely into smashing the scientists.
Actually, this there's like many things that you can find to like defeat their theory really easily, because even his establishment of theory was based on the principle that what do you call it? It was a complex. What do they call it? The cells in your body were simple cells, but actually this was this basis that we're all simple cells. Actually, it's very easy to understand. But then my spiritual master explains this actually. But now the cell is very complicated. Even one cell, you're not able to understand exactly what's going on. So Darwin's theory was on this basis, so it actually kind of starts to fall apart. And there's many other things. Maybe as we go through this, I can present some of the like fallacies of Darwin's theory of different things, like even this survival of the fittest, that falls apart completely. When you see practically what's going on in the world. So maybe a part of this can be like defeating Darwin's theory. That would be very nice. So just kind of going through some of these things. Okay.
Well said.
Yeah.
Okay, multiple.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so in answer to Kalki Prabhu's thing, like why are the heavenly planets described right after the forest of material enjoyment? Shukadeva Goswami, helps. Jiva Goswami, I think one of the acharyas, they write that all of this is to simply increase the adbhuta rasa of the supreme, our understanding about the supreme personality of Godhead. Like this adbhuta rasa, this rasa of wonder. It creates wonder. The supreme personality of Godhead, he creates, he's created the heavenly planets, he's created the hellish planets, and how all these things are functioning. And he creates all that. And the thing is, yes, the heavenly planets are described right after the forest of material enjoyment, and right after that, the hellish planets are described. So it's like it's meant to increase the adbhuta rasa. That's the point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Jita had a question?
Oh. No, he deleted it.
Anyways.
I think it might have been multiple.
Okay, so you have anything else? No? Okay. I don't know, there's nothing on there.
I had a quick thing.
You have a quick one?
So you were saying that if we accept that there is a creator, that our propensity to enjoy matter will go away, basically? Or?
Yeah, then there's some understanding that is there. Then one understands. One should become more inclined to understand who that is. And
what about Christians, they claim to accept that, but then they're some of the biggest sense gratifiers?
Yeah, because they're ignorant. It's just like the ignorance of the living entity may not go away, but it's a good start, that there is God and okay, we have to but their ignorance is that they don't really care about God actually. Their basis of understanding is that, well, there is God, if God is in my life, I can enjoy more. So it's a materialistic understanding of God consciousness. So then if they're intelligent enough, they'll inquire more and be able to come up. But you could say it's a start. It's some level of consciousness is there. It's a different levels.
God for your bread and stuff like that.
Yeah, God please provide my daily bread. Oh God, give us our daily bread. So it's just it's a very animal, it's another animal sort of platform of understanding. It's slowly, this little speck is being seen. It's okay, but it's still an animal. It's just all you want is food and sex. It's and that's what you want to do when you go up to heaven too. So it's just very preliminary. Is that the word? Preliminary? Elementary. Very very not such a good complete understanding. Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.